Hello, Catherine. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Nazam. Thank you for inviting me tonight.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to interview you.
My pleasure.
And friends, we have Catherine here. Katherine Zimmerman is an internationally known author and speaker. She is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, Reiki Master, and EFT practitioner with a private practice since 1989. She has taught classes on self-hypnosis, EFT, and other related subjects, along with doing presentations on hypnotherapy at professional conferences nationwide. A prolific writer, Catherine's published works include Business Solutions, Build Your Successful Holistic Practice, Hypnotherapy Scripts, Volume 1 to 5, a series of instructors' manuals containing everything an instructor requires to teach these classes and seminars, and numerous CE courses. In addition to training in advanced hypnotherapy with the late Gil Boyne in 1998, she learned EFT with the developer Gary Craig. She is an author and consultant, has lectured through the Speakers Network at the University of California, Davis, taught through the Learning Exchange in Sacramento, California, and taught for 14 years through the Experimental College at UC Davis, CA. Catherine is the director of the California Hypnotherapy Academy, a former guest lecturer for the University of California Medical Center, Davis, and former guest instructor for Hypnotherapy Training Institute of California. Yes, that's Catherine for us. Okay, Catherine. So my first question, how did you get into hypnotherapy?
Well, it's kind of an odd story. I think it demonstrates the being in the right place at the right time, and the universe is presenting you with an opportunity. I used to work at UC Davis. I did HR and accounting for a big department, and we hired someone to work in the office with us to get us caught up, clerical work, and she was going to hypnotherapy school. So she went to her first weekend of training, and she came back on Monday morning and she said, "This is fascinating." She said, "You need to come take this training with me." And I thought, oh, that sounds so interesting. And I love school and I had money in savings. Well, see how everything just fell into place. So I went to hypnotherapy school, and my first weekend, I remember coming home and saying, "This is what I'm supposed to be doing." I always knew there was something else. I just didn't know what it was. And when I found hypnotherapy, I thought, there it is. That's what I'm supposed to do. So, I mean, really, the rest is history. I took the full training, as many hours as I could at the time, which was 250 hours in a classroom. It took me 8 years to leave the university because I wasn't old enough to retire. And when I did retire, I didn't make enough money to even cover my house or my car payment, much less anything else. So I was highly motivated to build a practice. So that's how I got started.
Right. So let's get into the core hypnotherapy based questions. Thank you for sharing how you got into hypnotherapy. And Catherine, you have like, yes, there are so many hip certification courses. And however, what is your suggestion when someone is choosing a hypnotherapy certification course? Like, what is the minimum number of hours which is standard to get good knowledge and experience?
For me, it's always been a 200-hour course as the minimum number of hours. That's what I teach, and that's the course I took initially was, well, it was, back then it was 250 to be a clinical, have the clinical title, because I've been certified for 30 some years with the American Council of Hypnotist Examiners, and they have really high educational standards. So I think 200 hours with a broad spectrum of topics being covered is the ideal.
Okay, okay, thank you. And Catherine, there are some people who got trained maybe 10 years ago or like different courses. and they have been using the same tools, and you have also started offering the refresher course. So how is it different from a full-fledged training course? Is it refresher means, is it for only your students who got trained under you, or someone else who trained elsewhere want to brush up their basics? So could you please help me?
It's a basic course. It goes back over inductions and deepeners, and there's a lot of information in there. It's even a little brush up on age regression in that refresher course. So it's not just for my students, it's really for anyone. And I think it's beneficial for people who've had training with someone else to do a refresher with some different perspectives. So I've got a home study refresher course that I think the feedback I get, people say it's really helpful to get their skills back up and get them out there working with people again.
Wonderful. And you also offer many CE courses, and in one of that you offer age regression, which is like, oh my God, the scariest thing by some schools, even to the extent that they have removed that age regression part from their training and all that. Do you still feel that it works for the current generation as well? Okay. Age regression.
It does. And I think with age regression, it depends on who's doing the training. There's no, if you're well trained in it, and I teach my students transforming therapies based on Gil Boyne. Well, Gil Boyne's transforming therapy work is what I teach in my age regression course. And because it's, you're asking specific questions in a certain way, the open-ended questions, we're not going to end up with false memories or any of that. They're giving a report. So to me, the key for age regression is to be well trained before you go into it. And I do see a lot of people backing away from it. And I think it's a shame, because when they do that deeper work, it's life altering in just a few sessions. It is life altering.
And how about someone like, I'm asking on behalf of hypnotherapists, like, how about this re-traumatizing, or why do I have to make my clients react to something which has already happened, and etc., etc. So what's your advice about that?
Well, first of all, a lot of them seem to be afraid of an abreaction, but it's just a subconscious release of spontaneous release of subconscious emotion. So they cry while they're in hypnosis, then they come out feeling like the weight of the world has been lifted. Because maybe they didn't cry at the time. They didn't even acknowledge what had happened to them. I don't drag them back through that whole experience. They can witness it as an observer. They can be surrounded by helpers and police people, if that's what their imagination brings in. A lot of my clients over the years, when I say to them, what would you like? If you could change anything about that experience you had, what would it be? That it never happened. That it never happened. So I take them back to before the trauma and have them grow up all over again without it. And then they're not even revisiting the trauma, and they are, again, it's life altering.
Wonderful. And exactly the opposite of age regression is future life progression. You offer one of the CE about it. How can someone be assured that someone has visited future life, or it was just an imagination, Catherine? There's a possibility. So what's your...
Well, think about the imagination as part of the superconscious.
Mhm.
So if it's providing a metaphor for a past life or a future life, and it gives meaningful information in the moment, does it matter if it's a real future life or if it's a metaphor for a perceived future life that helps them today?
Okay.
Because what they're going to visit is not necessarily the real thing as much as it is potential.
Okay.
Or we could look at it as there's no time.
Mhm.
There's no time. So if there's no time, then everything is happening now. Past, present, and future is all happening now. So the future life that we're labeling future, is it in the future, or is it just out of reach and it's also happening now? So why wouldn't we visit it?
Amazing. Thank you. And Catherine, there are like different CE courses. So one such thing is intuition and spirituality. So I also believe that hypnotherapy or any other modality, forget hypnotherapy, any change worker, it would be a Reiki healer or EFT practitioner or a hypnotherapist, even a medical doctor. Doesn't matter, but intuition matters a lot there. It's not about what I got trained, and no, at that very moment, intuition clicks. So, could you please tell about that CE that you are offering?
That course, I think, is critical, well, like you say, for any helping profession or anything at all.
Even
We're all,
parents,
well, we're all intuitive. Some of us start out more intuitive than others, but doesn't it help every single person on the planet to develop that when they're making decisions, when they're moving through their normal everyday day? That course doesn't even have a prerequisite because it's helpful to everyone. And especially in the field of hypnotherapy, speaking from that's what I do the most of, then I hear words that I know what the client needs to hear sometimes because I hear it in my head and I feel compelled to say it. So that's my intuition combining with spirit saying, okay, say this, say this, say this. It used to be a voice in my ear, and the voice would say, tell him this. And I'd say, I'm kind of busy right now. But that backfired. So we all need intuition. We all need to develop it more than what we have in the moment, because it can all be like a muscle. It can be developed more than what we're using.
wonderful. And yes, there are many NLP courses like practitioner course, master practitioner, train the trainer, NLP coach. What is this therapeutic NLP, Catherine?
Well, I call it therapeutic NLP because so many people use NLP for sales, for example.
Yes,
My son used to work for a video store. He was the store director back when we had video stores. And they put him through an NLP course, and he had the highest sales of anybody in the district because he really took hold of that and made use of the NLP technique. So I wanted to differentiate people using NLP for sales and put it in the therapy, and that's why I call it therapeutic NLP. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you cover in that, Catherine? Like, let's say someone is trained in a practitioner course. Is it little different? Like you combine some of your experience and put it together, or like it's just NLP in a therapeutic setup?
I haven't taken an NLP course for so many years that what I do submodalities, I use reframe and anchor, I use future pacing, use a whole variety of some basic NLP tools that I rewrote and repackaged a little bit just because some of the ways of doing things didn't make common sense to me. And so I've rewritten it. And then since I've used it for so many years in a therapeutic context, that's the only way I know how to use it anymore.
Exactly, Catherine, because the NLP practitioner course, one could be an HR manager, one could be a doctor, one could be a therapist. It is generalized, but this I loved it because you have customized NLP purely for the therapeutic perspective because you come from a therapy background. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, wonderful.
And I used to teach this for the school in Northern California that I used to teach for.
Wow.
It's I think they've been in business now for something like 40 years. Anyway, I taught NLP for Randall, and one of my courses I had two master NLP practitioners in my class, and I'm thinking, oh, great. A little intimidated by that, but they both said to me after the day we were done, they both liked what I had done and the way I'd presented it, and it made a lot of sense to them. And I thought, okay, good.
Wonderful. That's the reason because it is specific for the therapeutic work, then the applications and the ideas that come like just the normal practitioner goes, oh, can I use this for anxiety? Or like, this or that, but here it is very straightforward. Thank you about that. And one more approach in hypnotherapy field, Catherine. Either or approach, I never am a great fan of. Should I use a script or shouldn't I use a script? or even the people who are using scripts are now termed as scriptologists. And people who might be just graduated from a hypnotherapy school, or sometimes maybe for a recording, or in certain situations, a senior most hypnotherapist like you have put their experience and come up with scripts. So, what is your suggestion, being an author of 5 volumes of scripts? What is your suggestion on where we strike a balance?
I think the balance comes with these are, well, first of all, I think of them as training wheels.
Okay.
You can get other people's phrasing that's helpful as you're learning how to put things together. You can get, it stimulates your creativity to read how somebody else might work with someone. And after a while, it doesn't take all that long, I don't think. After a while, you start building confidence, because even using a script, people make change. Then there comes a point where you're looking ahead at the script, at what it says. And I teach my students not to read them, but to read it out loud, change it to fit your speech pattern, where you would phrase it. Then as you're using it with a client, look ahead and see what it says next. Just say it. Don't read it. They can tell when you're reading, but they don't. Honestly, my clients have not cared if I've read them something that I'm not well familiar with. But as time goes on, what I find for myself and for other people, they start out with a script, and then they look ahead and say, I'm going to toss that aside because I have enough information about the client. And that just kind of planted the seed for where I want to go with the session. And now the script holds me back.
Yeah.
But I think there are so many benefits to them. And I don't say that just because I sell scripts. I started out writing a script for every client who came in. I'd get an idea of what they needed on the phone. They'd come for their appointment. I would have written a script just for them. Then they'd come to my office and they'd say, I know I said I wanted to work on X, but really I've decided I want to work on Y.
Okay.
But I wrote you a script for X. And that's when I started weaning off of scripts, because I thought, well, that was just half an hour not well spent.
Yeah.
But I think there are so many, and at the end of a day, let's say I've had a day with 5 clients, which I really don't like 5 in one day, I like 4. But if I had that 5th client, by then I'm a little bit on overload. I'm tired. I'm not feeling as creative. I might need a script for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And here comes one more interesting aspect. Like, you have created different instructor manuals. First of all, before asking you about each of the manuals that you have created, Catherine, what inspired you to create this unique? I haven't heard of anyone creating such products. So, what inspired you?
Well, when I first graduated from school, we were all, our last day in class, we're all saying to each other, how are you going to start your practice? And I would always say the same thing. I'd say, I'm going to teach a workshop. And then I would hear what I just said, and I'd say, oh no, wait. I'm afraid to speak to groups. I don't know why I said that. And then someone else would ask, I'd say the same thing. And after a while, I started doing this. Is there someone behind me saying that for me? Why do I keep saying that? I'm afraid to speak to groups. But I thought, there must be a part of me that knows I can do it. So I decided to be inspired by that part. And I did a bunch of research, read a bunch of books, and I wrote a self-hypnosis course. And then I advertised it, and I taught 2 women. And I was nervous, even though I knew them both, and taught it, and then saw what they liked and didn't like, revised it, taught it, got over being afraid to, I did self-hypnosis, got over my fear of speaking to groups. And then one day, so I've got this material I'm using, this colleague came to visit, and I said, let me show you my notes from this class I've been teaching. I'm so excited about this class. And I showed her all the handouts and the lecture material. And she said, Catherine, why don't you package that and sell it to other hypnotherapists? And I said, why would they want my stuff? And she said, because they don't know how to create their own. Voila, there we are.
Oh, wonderful.
And now I think I have 6. And they're
Yeah.
all field tested. I write it up, I teach it, I see where it needs to be adjusted, I make some changes, I teach it. That's been my method for years.
Wonderful. So I know there are like quite six of them that I'll just ask about two or three. Fear
Okay.
to freedom. Could you please tell about that fear to freedom? Because lot of people are, and once I was curious to search for how many kinds of fears have been identified. The list was going on and on and on, like 300 plus, but I don't think it is just restricted to some number. Fear is a fear. Being rational or irrational doesn't matter. But could you please tell me about that?
Well, that one came at a time of whatever. I don't remember what was going on in the world at the time, but I pay attention to the things my clients come in for. So fear's just been a theme even before COVID. There's a pretty big theme for people. And then I ran across this book by Susan Jeffers called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And so I thought, oh, so I bought the book and I read it. And she had so many practical ideas about how to deal with this that I started. Well, I always read a book through the first time and then I read it again with the thought of, if I were to use this in a hypnotherapy classroom or hypnosis, how would I do that? So I just developed it and advertised it, and people were very interested in that. And they're simple techniques, but they all include hypnosis and things they can do, self-help things they can do between class and just in life in general. And it's gone over really well because look around the world. There is so much out there that makes us nervous and fearful.
Yes,
People
yes,
need tools, and they get tools in this course.
we do. And Catherine, I am myself an EFT trainer. EFT, like I've taken certain courses. However, let's say someone who has just purchased your EFT instructor manual without any background of EFT. So first they have applied EFT on themselves and again intended to teach. Still, does that EFT instructor manual serves the purpose, Catherine?
No, for that one, I think they really need to have a CE course to teach them EFT.
Okay, okay.
I think they need a foundation EFT. Then they need to use it for a while on themselves and clients, and then when they really have proven to themselves how well it works, then they could teach it to other people.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Wonderful. Of course, because EFT, again, there are different other things like now. One of my favorite topics, which is loving ourselves. I'm a great fan of Louise Hay, and that's like she's been very influential in many of the therapists' lives. So, what inspired you to create this specific instructor manual, Catherine?
It always comes back to the things that I hear my clients talk about. And underlying every other issue, there seems to be a lack of self-love. If they love themselves, really, truly love themselves, would they smoke? Would they overeat? Would they do any of the behaviors they do that are harmful to them? I don't think they would, because they would love themselves enough to make better choices. So that class has been had some huge changes for people. I've taught it in a retreat format where they just can't get away from me. and they get day two, they really get pushed and pushed, and they have these breakthroughs. And it's exciting to see that.
Wow, amazing. And yeah, Catherine, please. You're about to tell something?
Oh no.
Right. And Catherine, I want to ask you about the main certification course that you offer. However, before that, my question is, do you see any difference between taking an online course and a live training, which is face to face? Because now the technology is changed. No need to travel. One sitting at the comfort of their home, they are taking. But when you started back then, it was different. Now the situations are different. However, what is your perspective about online and face-to-face training?
As long as the online training includes live on Zoom or live on something like Zoom, then I'm noticing I've been doing online training now for a few years. We're not in class for 8 hours a day because that's exhausting. 2 days in a row. We're all blithering idiots at the end of those 2 days of live training. People start to drift off and not really absorb in a live class when it goes on that long. So to me, that's a bit of a downside. With the students I'm teaching live online, they have pre-recorded lecture that I recorded while I was in a live class. They listen to the lecture, they read the material, the required reading and then the manual. They see videos. Then when they come to class, they have questions about the lecture. They have questions about the book. They have questions about the videos. And so the class time we have, I think, is better spent. It's experiential. It's more like a lab. Then I can do a demonstration with one of the students. We can talk about what they just learned. Then they can pair off and practice in breakout rooms. I mean, I really think they're getting it more in depth doing it with this format, which surprises me. I have to say, it really kind of surprises me than when I was doing because when I was doing that live class, honestly, I would have students, you know, the saying, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Oh, I don't know that I agree with that. I had students, I would be lecturing and I would say, you know, and I'm pretty straightforward and I'm not hard to understand. I'm aiming for the middle of the group. And yet I would have students say, well, could you tell me about this? You mean that thing I told you 30 seconds ago? Where were you? They've drifted off. And when the 3-hour class, they're less likely to drift off. They're more focused, they're more present. If they haven't had to travel, they haven't had to sleep in a hotel room, worrying about the extra money. I think I'm seeing some advantages to it, absolutely, doing that online.
Wonderful. And Catherine, your main certification course, is it completely based on Gil Boyne's work of transformation therapy, or like you have your own modules? Like, what is this main certification course?
I do teach transforming therapy in level 2, but I cover, I'm looking for I have a whole stack of paper here, looking for my catalog that I know I have here. I cover all kinds of things. I took a very eclectic hypnotherapy training back in '89. And so there it is. That's what I teach. So we do, I covered the basic things, inductions and deepeners. I do waking conversational hypnosis, idiomotor. The NLP comes in 2 days in level 1. We talk about, first we lay a foundation in level 1, it's 100 hours. We lay the foundation. Then in level 2, we get into the in-depth things. So hypnosis for health comes in level 2, age regression, parts therapy, working with subpersonalities is in level 2. So I've got 2 days of age regression. I do 2 days of parts therapy. Then after we did all of that, the beginning of the level 2, then we do hypnosis for health because we need those tools to work with weight and smoking. So everything I do builds on everything else, but it's a pretty eclectic approach. I teach Gestalt. I teach Randall Churchill's Become the Dream. I follow his protocol for dream work because I really like the way he does it. And then what is lacking in a lot of hypnotherapy programs is hypnosis for starting a business. So I spend 2 days on business things because I'm good at business. And you can be the best hypnotherapist on the planet, but you better be able to do that marketing and all of that business piece to it. Otherwise, you won't make a living at it. And you can make a good living.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's a very good package altogether.
I'm happy with it. There are more things I could teach, but I'd have to expand the course because it's really filled up right now.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. And thank you very much, Catherine, for your time. And this is the purpose of my interview series, that different trainers, different protocols, and the wide variety of products they are available, so that we don't have to reinvent the tools. So like, wheel our tool, it's the same. So thank you very much. And thank you for your contribution to the field of hypnotherapy.
Oh, my pleasure. I'd hate to leave the planet and not have shared everything that I've learned because I know it can help other people.
Yes, thank you. Thank you once again.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed spending some time with you, Nizam.
Likewise, Catherine. Thank you.